Go ahead. Hello and welcome to Full Throttle, the programme from the Alliance of British Drivers. I'm Paul Naylor, Head of Communications of the Alliance of British Drivers.
Hi, I'm Brian Gregory, Policy Director of the ABD. Today we're joined by Dr Tilak Doshi, an economist with decades of international experience in the energy industry and think tanks. Tilak is energy editor at the Daily Sceptic and writes regularly about energy policy, net zero, and the economic consequences, I must put the right teeth in, of the green transition.
That's easy for you to say, Brian.
No, it isn't.
We're going to discuss Tilak's latest article, The Direction of UK Energy Policy, and what it could all mean for British drivers. Tilak, welcome to Full Throttle.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Great.
Thank you, Tilak. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it very much.
You're welcome.
Okay.
So, for listeners who may be meeting you for the first time, could you tell us a little bit more about your background and what led you into energy economics?
It was actually quite a chance occurrence. I worked in a research institute as a junior fellow after doing my master's. And that institute had a link with the East-West Center with a particular person who happened to be an oil consultant, quite a famous oil consultant. So I was asked to go and do my PhD there at the East-West Center. And I got into oil and gas, went back to the research institute, and within 1 year decided that academia wasn't for me, and I joined the private sector in the oil and gas industry. So that was about 25 years ago.
Yeah, that was time. Just departing from our script, that my career path mirrored that. Also, I read chemistry at Oxford, was nearly going to do a DPhil in molecular biophysics. Did the interview round and went to a few places like Procter & Gamble, you know, the places that everybody went in those days, went through the interviews and thought, I don't want to join any of these people. I need to understand more about business. So then I did a business studies qualification at Edinburgh and then went back around the interview round and decided I didn't want to go into research. I went into commercial industry and the titanium pigment industry, where I spent over 30 years. So, you know, there is a certain symmetry with you know how our careers have progressed and where we've ended up, I guess. So yeah, it's coming back to our script. Your latest Daily Sceptic article compares the institutional behaviours seen during COVID with climate policy. What do you think are the strongest parallels in modelling, claims of settled science, the treatment of dissent, and the authority given to experts? I know that's a wide topic, but, you know, feel free to, you know, respond as you see appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. I've written several articles on this, on looking at the policy parallels and behavior of government with both COVID and climate. Now, of course, COVID was far more short-term, quick. So all the junk modeling that occurred, particularly Neil Ferguson's from Imperial College, his modeling was found out within the space of a few months what junk it was. Now the junk IPCC modeling of the United Nations, that has been long in the running of being junk for decades, but only recently in April did the IPCC committee itself retract one of its more extreme scenarios.
RCP 8.5.
Exactly. And that RCP 8.5 scenario, which was quite ludicrous to begin with, right when it was formulated, and many observers and scientists pointed that out, but it took a decade before they retracted that scenario. The modeling, the junk modeling that underlies both COVID and climate are fascinating. The parallels. It's almost like when you look at it, it's almost like going back to times of antiquity when you cut a goat and look at the entrails to see what the gods
or tea leaves in a.
I was just thinking tea leaves.
Yeah. And except it's not tea leaves, it's not entrails, but high gizmos like computers. And one of the best descriptions of this is by Steve Kunin in his book Unsettled, where he talks about how people tune these models so that however convincing or plausible it may sound, when they actually run those models, they do all this tuning to make it behave because it doesn't behave otherwise. And all this tuning is ad hoc and arbitrary. I'm not a heavy modeler myself. I do some economic modeling, but this climate model have been extensively discussed by very able people like Steve Kunin.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you've got people like John Christie at the University of Huntsville, who's done excellent graphics showing the average of 100 and something climate models and the extremes of the envelope, and the IPCC uses the average of all those models, and there's only one model, which is a Russian model by Habibullah Abdusamatov, which is anything like the observations, because the observations run along the bottom. All these models are going like that. And Habibullah Abdusamatov's model doesn't even have carbon dioxide in it as a forcing entry, only water vapor. So as a former scientist, for me, if you run a lot of models and they don't comply with reality, then the models are wrong, and you need to go back and re-look at your models. Because if reality is doing one thing and the models are doing something else, then don't use it as a predictor, because it's clearly a useless predictor.
Yes. And when you try to chase these things down, it gets murkier and murkier, because even the observations now, there's some data sets that have been corrupted by Nobel scientists giving the Nobel lie. All kinds of adjustments that occur, and the rules of those adjustments are never known. So the modeling part is a complete dog's breakfast. But outside of the modeling, there are other parallels as well. One of the most striking aspects of it is their cancellation of dissent. That comes out because people's lives are involved, personal tragedies, vicious attacks. On COVID, of course, we saw it in all its glory with Fauci and Francis Collins ganging up behind the scene and pulling down very illustrious scientists like Bhattacharya, and our own Sengupta from Oxford, as well as Martin Kulldorff from Harvard. So these people were leading scientists in their field, absolutely unimpeachable credentials, were being cancelled, marginalized, character assassinated. So that was striking. And if you noticed in my article, I referred to the example of Norman Fenton, who is whose tragic case I covered for Daily Sceptic as well. And he's come out with his new book, by the way, which I intend to review if possible. But this attack on individuals is extremely concerning.
Yeah, and Peter Ridd is another excellent example. The guy who worked on the coral reef, Great Barrier Reef, because he was hounded out of his job, and then they found that what he was saying was actually correct, and there's no problem with the Great Barrier Reef.
Yeah, they were saying it was practically dead, weren't they?
Yeah, and it's complete rubbish. It's
absolutely. And he had to leave his university
he was hounded out of his post.
Yeah, he had to leave his university just like Norman Fenton did, right?
Yeah.
And the list goes on. Judith Surrey and a number of other people.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you take a lot of this back to the COVID crisis, because I think a lot of people, for many, that feels like ancient history now, doesn't it? But it's good that you remind people that this is where a lot of these problems sort of emanated from. But in modern terms, in where we are now, do you think that the net zero transfers an unusual amount of decision making from households and markets to ministers, regulators, and so-called expert bodies?
Oh, again, absolutely, you hit the nail on the head. That's the a feature that is extremely inherent and innate in everything that we discuss. It's the idea that I lost the track that we were going on. I apologize.
So we were talking about how in effect the democratic process has really been hijacked.
Yeah. I got really I've written a fair few articles on this, and one of the constant themes that goes right through is the distinction between one camp, which is dirigist, state-centric, central planned, experts know it all, Plato's Republic, philosopher kings, and the rest of us plebs can just shut up and be told by experts what to do.
Essentially, it's sort of Marxo-fascist collectivist thinking.
Yeah, it is.
Absolutely. And on the other end, which is where I come from in my training and in the kind of mentors I had, was in the classical liberal tradition of Smith and Hayek, where you've got a minimal state and a maximal arena for commerce and enterprise to take place.
Yeah.
Now, of course, continue
to that, because
so the counter one immediately gets is that, but you see, markets don't work when you got externalities. That's true. And what are these externalities? Pollution. Now, pollution, we are talking of real pollution with real health linkages, like sulfur oxides, nitrogen oxides, ground ozone, mercury, lead, not carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is absolutely it's a miracle gas.
It's an essential trace gas. Without it, the plants are dead, and if the plants are dead, we're dead.
Absolutely. So that point about how net zero and COVID are all emergencies that are proclaimed. H.L. Mencken's hobgoblins created by politicians in order to get the masses to clamor for safety.
Yeah. I think what it boils down to is that governments are supposed to be elected to represent the will of the people, not to come up with stuff that people should really be having some sort of referendum on. I mean, if we had a referendum on whether we stayed in or left the European Union, then surely we should be having a referendum on whether we are effectively sending ourselves back to the dark ages by promoting net zero. You know?
Absolutely.
And that is as important, if not more important, than the whole EU thing.
And the science is being manipulated now, because, I mean, I've actually looked at this thing about, as we were talking about emissions, the current levels of emissions quoted in micrograms per cubic meter. Well, micrograms is millionths of a gram, and a cubic meter is a million cubic centimeters. If you measure it in micrograms per cubic centimeter, the values are in picograms. So they're in trillionths of a gram. And the levels of air quality are so good in the UK now that, you know, we only know they're there because we can measure them with really sophisticated equipment. But if you want to find polluted air in comparison, go down the tube, you know, which is like thousands of times worse than urban air quality. And they're throwing their hands up about 7 micrograms per cubic meter, 7 picograms per cubic centimeter, vanishingly small quantity. When if you to go to, I'm trying to remember where the worst place is, but World Health Organization has a measure, and we are 89th out of 100 and something capital cities, where the 100 and something, which I think is Canberra, is the best, and the worst is Colombo or somewhere, I can't remember exactly, and that has dreadful air quality because they haven't updated the vehicles, and they're not, you know, industry. It's a combination of a multitude of factors, and certainly vehicle pollution is, you know, one of the bottom ones on the list. But it's used because it's a useful handle to beat people over the head with in terms of moving about, using cars and all the rest of it. If you can threaten them with, as you say, one of Mencken's hobgoblins, you know, oh, the air's so polluted, you know, 1,000 people are going to die, and it's all from a model. Nobody's looked at the measurements.
Well, this is it. When they sensationalize the actual figure rather than you drilling down and looking at what the measurement actually is, that figure in isolation looks shocking, doesn't it? You know, but 24,000 or whatever. But 24,000 what?
How did you arrive at that? Is that empirical evidence or is it a model? And the answer is normally it is a model. Therefore, you know, garbage in to produce the model, garbage out when you run the model.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And you know, there's on some of my writings on the issue of air quality in Britain. Britain is probably cleaner air now than the last 200 years.
Yes,
by
easily.
By far.
Because
absolutely.
In the past, people were living in, well, initially humans were living in caves and they were burning dung and wood for lighting, heating, and cooking, which is a pretty awful environment to live in, and that's why people didn't live much beyond 40. And that's still the case in the developing world for many nations. The key thing that they really want is access to clean, safe energy, clean water, clean, consistent, dispatchable power, and good quality food. And the current eco-zealotry actually wants to deprive people in the developing world of those very things that would improve their lot and the quality of life for all of them, and also, you know, drive up living standards so that they would have a all-round better quality of life, and probably would have less children as a result, because, you know, when you're living in an economy where really it's barely subsistence, you have as many children as you can to make sure you're looked after in your older age.
Mortality rates and things, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly, because of mortality rates. But once those things start to improve, people have less children.
Mortality rate alters.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I've never understood this idea that, you know, we need to stop the earth, people multiplying, because ultimately it tops out when everybody gets to an acceptable standard of living and has whatever number of children to sustain the society. In fact, we've actually gone the wrong way now, where there are not enough people having children in Europe or across European nations now, and the size of our populations is actually dropping instead of
a lot of that's down to the cost of living, I think, isn't it?
Well, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, some of us call it carbon colonialism from the third world point of view, with net zero ideologues imposing their views on the World Bank, on the IMF, to constrain us. But going back to the point about air quality, one of the things that comes up again is the corruption of science, which is a theme again going through, you know, both COVID, climate, and a number of areas. And the specific corruption of science, interestingly, I forget the exact term, it's called linear no threshold, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So there's no safe dose.
Yeah,
Basically.
exactly, which is completely unscientific.
Yeah.
But is being pushed for what it's worth. But there's one more thing which is somewhat darker and more ominous when we look into both COVID and climate, which is that the population itself, or segments of the population, uh, and areas of a country where people actually are like Mencken's messes clamoring for safety. So during COVID, you had neighbors sneaking on each other.
Yeah.
Or that guy went out and he
Yeah.
wasn't supposed. So the point I suppose that one observes is that it's not just governments and cabals and constellation of interest doing it, but people themselves can be led down this very dark path by an appeal to fear.
Yes.
Appealing to fear is one of those things, and both climate and COVID, and COVID in particular, that appeal to fear.
In many ways, it's a reflection of what went on in 1930s Germany. That the people were whipped up, and it was national fervor, but all behind it was fear of the Jews in the case of Germany initially, but then they started with the Jews, then it was the trade unionists, then it was the academics and so on. So basically, you suppress all the opposition and you control the message. Die große Lüge, as not Himmler. Maybe it was Himmler. So if you keep repeating the same lie across all the organs of the media, you'll get people to believe it. And of course, that's what we saw being rerun during COVID.
Absolutely.
I could never understand at the very start. It takes 10 years or so. I'm not in pharmaceuticals, but I know that if you do the research for a vaccine or whatever, it takes about 10 years to safely produce a vaccine. Mysteriously, this ailment appears, and suddenly within 18 months they have a vaccine. Well, that means it's not clinically trialed, So I was extremely skeptical from the very start, and got more and more skeptical as it went on. And I never had any of them, none of them. No,
I think what it all boils down to is control, and the best way to control people isn't to imprison them; is to make them fearful of something. Yes. So people for centuries were very God-fearing. So that was the control. Then for many years it was the threat of war, and then subsequently nuclear war. So it was the fear of the bomb. And these days it's the fear of net zero. It's the fear of sort of self-destruction of the planet by not following the net zero agenda. That is the common way of controlling people. And for some reason, people have taken the Kool-Aid, and they're accepting this as being legitimate science, and we know it's not.
One of the first areas of intellectual capture was the education system.
Yes,
our children have been indoctrinated with this absurd nonsense, and of course they lap it all up, or a certain proportion of them do. I think there are quite a few younger people now getting very, very skeptical about the real objectives behind this net zero.
It'll come back around to sense again at some point.
Pendulum will start to swing. The problem is that government is, through all the organs that are available to it, is trying to stop the reverse swing of the pendulum by controlling what access we have to what media.
Well, this is it. This is a problem. You're right to identify that education's got that sort of leaning to it, but at the same time, we've also got a police force that's been controlled by that same sort of mindset. Hence, all the nonsense that's happened recently, where somebody that's been stabbed and is lying there dying isn't being listened to, but the other gentleman is being listened to purely because he's being heard whilst the chap on the floor isn't. And then on top of that, you've got a media that is very sort of left-leaning, and for the BBC to be able to have an agenda. When I was growing up, it didn't feel like the BBC was saying anything other than what it was supposed to say. It wasn't expressing its own thought. It was reporting on the news. Yeah. Whereas these days, it's reporting its own agenda, which it's not good. So it does need to come back around to some form of common sense, whereby they're reporting, and this isn't just from a news point of view, this is from an education point of view, from a policing. Yeah. It should all come down to fact and giving people the information rather than creating the information.
Yeah, I think one of the other worrying developments, Tilak, is the introduction of behavioural psychology, nudge, where the government sees it as part of its remit to nudge people in particular political directions. And I do not understand how subliminal advertising is illegal, but nudge is not, because both of them work at a subconscious level. And really, you want the electorate to make rational decisions based on a rational assessment of the facts. You don't want government departments nudging in one direction or the other because it suits government policy. And this comes back to what Paul was saying earlier about government actually enacting policies which are to its advantage, but not to the advantage of the rest of the populace, and certainly not to the electorate's advantage.
Yes, behavioral economics has been established over the past, I think, almost 2 decades. So when it first came out,
Cameron brought it in.
In economic theory, I forget the lead guys, but and the person who started it got a Nobel Prize for it. Now, behavioral economics is extremely interesting, but among the early observations of the outcome of the insights of behavioral economics was its tendency towards a soft authoritarianism, where you determine people's behavior by manipulating the context and the packaging and the framing of the questions.
And and the words used, the semantics, that it's a whole package. And I if it were up to me, I would have all of the behavioural psychologists embedded in government, because most departments have them. I would hand them all their P45s and tell them to go and find a job somewhere else, because there's no place in politics for behavioural psychology, in my opinion, except maybe rehabilitating axe murderers and stuff like that. But anywhere else, sling your up, mate, as they used to say where I was brought up.
I enjoyed writing an article on nudging very much. This is a year or two ago. Going into a restaurant, being given a bill, and I didn't look at the bill very carefully. And then later on, I realized when I went home after paying the bill, I realized that there was a £3 or something charge on helping green the earth. That money was meant to plant some trees somewhere. Yeah. So I, as a matter of principle, went back to the shop and requested a refund, because I wasn't explicitly told about that bill. Yes. I had to. So the default option became accepting it unless I objected to it. And that's part of the behavioral economics.
Yeah, exactly. That's very much what's happening nowadays. Things pass through by default unless you actually raise the issue and say, no, I don't accept that, which is the wrong way around again. Yeah. It should be opt in, not opt out.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I mean, quite often these days,
if you opt in, but otherwise you should be automatically opted out. But
exactly.
That's not happening. It's the opposite.
Yeah. I've eaten that a couple of times where it's put on in small print on the receipt. A discretionary 10% has been taken for service or whatever. It should be up to you whether you tip. It shouldn't be built into the price of the meal.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So Brian, you can ask the next one.
Where are we now? Yes. No, I've lost track now of where we are. Okay. I think I know where we are. So bring this directly back to road users, drivers. How do the EV sales mandate, fuel taxation, road charging, low emission zones, and reduced road space fit into the wider program? Well, I have my own views, but I'm sure you'll have interesting views as well to that.
Yeah, it's almost as if they want to control everything, and once the object of control is the CO2 that you breathe out, literally every day, every minute, every second, until the day you die. If that is the metric of control, then everything that you do, what you eat, where you fly, how you drive, they all become part of the saving the world mission that they have brought upon themselves as their responsibility in order to get the rest of us to follow lives of servility and ultimate constraint. So it's extremely upsetting. I mean, like COVID. Now we realize, although this data was out there very quite some time ago, in fact, from the beginning, if you track the right people, was that it started with the Ministry of Defense initiative. So COVID itself was part of the DARPA complex and bio warfare to begin with. So now going back to the road usage here, what you also realize is that all these things, low traffic neighborhoods, low emission zones, bike lanes, and so on, they all lead to a money spigot for Sadiq Khan like nothing else.
Yes.
Now, and that money, of course, goes to you for use to his pet agendas like LGBTQ or the Islamification of London, whatever it is. So the kind of how would you put it? The kind of nastiness and the punitive approach taken to the normal average guy trying to make his ends meet.
Yes.
That's the tragedy of it all.
And that's what's breeding a huge amount of resentment, because it's the ordinary guy, the guy, tools in the car, diesel van, driving around, sort of plumber or electrician, all of the trades that really ultimately we rely on nowadays, because it's hard to get a plumber as it is to get a decent doctor, And these guys are the ones who are keeping people's homes running smoothly, heating, all the rest of it, and they're being penalized unreasonably based on junk science, as we said before, and they're prevented from carrying out their legitimate businesses as expeditiously as they should be allowed to do it. And of course, all these 20-mile-an-hour zones, the huge amount of wasted economic time that nobody's done a cost-benefit analysis on, and even if you accepted the casualty reductions that they argue for these limits, and I don't, because the evidence doesn't support any real casualty reductions. When you look at the economic cost, you could save way more lives with the money that you did capture from the fines and all the rest of it, if you put those back into the economy, into hospitals, into emergency services, national health, then the stupid punitive approach actually delivers. It's madness.
I moved to London from Singapore about 3 years ago, and Singapore is, of course, the opposite of this wokeness in most parts of life. And you arrive at the airport, and you're whisked in your taxi straight into the heart of Singapore within 20 minutes. Beautiful roads, 70, 90 kilometers per hour speed limit. Absolutely. And when I wrote that article on the class war on London motorists, one of the things that got a lot of feedback was I actually did an AI inquiry that said who was faster, that asked who was faster, the Roman charioteer when he was in Londinum, or the modern driver in London traffic, and the charioteer was faster. Can you believe that? Can you believe that? 2,000 years of regression.
Exactly. So progress has been stalled and turned back. I mean, I recall when I used to work in the centre of London, in the West End, in Stratton Street, so near Green Park Tube Station, and I was living in Reading. And in those days, if I got out of Reading by about 5:45, I could get into the centre of London by about 6:30, because the traffic was very light. This was before there was a bus lane on the elevated section, and all the traffic lights were phased, so that if you stuck to the speed limit, or I guess multiples of it, which I never tried, but if you got to a green light, all the lights were phased. So if it was green, then it would be green all the way, right in the centre of London. Whereas now they've randomised them all. They've put in all these bus lanes, which just subtract road space for everybody else and cram all the traffic into less room. And they've got all the emissions controls and all the rest of it now. It must be horrendous driving in London. I'm glad I moved back up north many years ago, late 70s, early 80s. And it must be dreadful now. And counterproductive economically,
and again, somewhat humorously, but I think appropriately, one can see heroes and villains in all these things. So the class one motorists, the heroes are the Blade Runners who go around cutting down instruments.
Oh yes, yeah.
And the villains, believe it or not, are the cyclists who hog the road, who do not slow down. I'm more fearful as a pedestrian of bicyclists than I am of cars.
Absolutely.
And the amount of space given to them, it is just so ridiculous. So I know my heroes and my villains.
But I think that the changes they've made to the highway code and to the prioritization of road users gives cyclists the feeling that they're not just indestructible, but they're omnipotent. They have unlimited powers to ride through red lights, to come out at junctions without giving way to traffic, all the rest of it. And it's bred this sort of invulnerable kamikaze mentality,
I think it's high time that they got some form of registration for the bikes, and maybe some taxation as well for the roads.
Well, I'm less worried about it because I don't think they do much road damage.
Well, no, I know, but if they're taking up the space,
the accidents they cause result. But
if they're taking up a big proportion of the asphalt by having like lanes of their own, then they should.
Which they don't use most of the time. That's the other problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
it is. Go on.
So Tilak, with all these different policies, what do you believe the cost to personal freedom and personal mobility?
I think it's apparent to all of us, isn't it? I mean, it's like the classic case of the frog in a pot of boiling water.
Yeah. If you turn the heat up too quickly, he jumps out. But if you do it slowly, you can.
Yeah. No, I checked on that. That actually is probably not true, that frogs actually can just be lulled to their death with slowly rising temperatures. I think when it comes to a certain threshold, they actually do jump off. And speaking of which, again, there's the analogy. So we had Brexit in 2016, we had Trump in 2016. Both were frogs jumping off the slowly steaming boiling water of leftism, wokeism, and increasingly intrusive government control. So if you look at the Brexit case, almost all, and if you do a map of where the votes were, the leavers and the remainers, most of the university towns and of course London itself, they were all remainers.
Yes.
And the working class and the lower middle classes, the most of us were leavers.
Yeah.
Same with Trump.
Yes.
Trump, it was the sort of woke populations on the two coasts of the U.S.
Yes.
And liberal cities run by Democrats, but everywhere else was Republican.
Yes.
It's clear just how this, and it's not so much left right anymore.
No,
it's
I don't
more,
think. Yeah, it's totalitarian libertarian, because far left and far right, if you were a subject of the Stalin regime or the Hitler regime, functionally you wouldn't feel any different, because they were oppressive and you had very little freedom, very little power.
Yeah, it's not a straight line anymore. It's like a curve, and they meet.
It's totalitarian libertarian. The Overton window is completely different now. And when Starmer was going on about far right, well, that set my hackles up, because far right and far left have joined up, up there, totalitarian, and we, the libertarian majority, are being accused of being some kind of weird, off the scale idiot. And it really, yanked my chain, I have to say, because he is a prime example of a sort of Marxo-fascist totalitarian. He sets the laws, and so he decides what's right and what's wrong. Well, actually, no, there are fundamental standards of right and wrong, and much of what he was doing was actually violating, what's the right term? True libertarian principles, sort of natural justice, if you like.
But these guys are all puppets anyway, right? This Fabian ideology that rules the establishment. I mean, and Andy Burnham, I guess, is cut from the same cloth. So
yes,
I don't expect to see much difference from him. Let's see. But it's hard to be worse than Starmer.
It's a very low bar to work from.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. I think he's had a personality bypass before they put him in the job.
Shocking.
He was dreadful, terrible communicator.
Terrible ideas.
Just seemed totally insincere. Well, like Max Headroom robotic kind of thing, really. Yeah. Burnham seems to have a bit more character, but I'm not sure that his principles or his guiding lights are that much different from Starmer, as you say, Tilak. I think that's the problem. He's a bit more of a chameleon, I think.
Yes, I think to the extent that they are card-holding Fabian Society members explains significantly where they come from, and of course, we all love flying and traveling, particularly in business or first class. So when you go to all these places in Davos and United Nations and so on and so forth, they're all part of that crowd too. So WEF.
The ones who are saving the world are the ones who are jetting backwards and forwards multiple times a year and telling us that we can't drive our car and can't heat our homes.
But they do buy their carbon indulgences, though. I'll have you know.
Okay, so we're back to the sort of the pseudo-religious kind of thing, really. I'll buy my indulgences and I'll keep doing all these awful things, but you plebs, you just got to suck it up. It doesn't wash for me. Don't like
one of the funniest things was one of the big G7, G8 conferences a couple of years back, where they put on a fleet of electric vehicles to transfer people around, and it was powered by a massive diesel generator.
Just ridiculous.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So where are we now?
There's just one final question, I think, Brian.
Yeah. So as transport becomes more connected, metered, and digitally managed, could road pricing or carbon accounting becomes a means of monitoring or rationing movement? And what's the supporting evidence, and what do you think remains speculation? I mean, I have quite strong views on this. I think that's what they're aiming for, but be interested to hear your take on it, Tilak.
Well, I think it connects back to that frog in warming water. I mean, they've been warming this water for quite some time, for 20 years, through the climate change thing. So the ratcheting effect is what, and when it's ratcheted in small amounts, in small over time, one can get away with it.
As the Americans say, by the inch cinch, by the yard it's hard.
That's right. That's right. And so until some crisis occurs, so what do we see? Fauci's diaries being exposed. That sort of, gives the lie to all this slowly but surely upward ratcheting constraints on our behavior across all dimensions.
Yeah.
So to go back to that question, I think it's with beyond doubt that they will do things like further controls on your driving behavior. It would be ridiculous to expect otherwise, because what have we seen? We have seen precisely those sorts of constraints being established, and now we can't think of a London without traffic lanes, without low emission zones, without turning the wrong corner and paying a 70 quid fine. We can't imagine that anymore because we've been habituated to it. So it is rather ominous, but as I said, there are reasons to believe that some of this overreach may create its own backlash. So in particular, we see the parties like AfD in Germany, Le Pen's National Front in France, our own Nigel Farage, Reform UK. We're seeing these reactions back against this sort of liberal fascist system that seems to be crystallizing around us. So there is hope yet, and maybe we should see how best we can play a role in turning that pendulum back.
Because certainly, I think, with 40 odd million road users in the country, if there was a party that said, look, we are going to stop this war, we're going to pull out a lot of the cameras, we're going to make the speed limit sensible and set using the correct road safety science, and we're not going to, carpet bomb the place with cycle lanes and bus lanes, we're going to get the traffic flowing again, people would vote for that. If there was a political party said, we are going to make your life easier, we're going to make mobility the standard instead of it, being restricted and held back, there would be a lot of political resonance in that argument, and it would actually improve the growth in the economy. It would improve the speed of moving goods around. It would make everybody's lives a lot easier, a lot better.
Yes, let's see how one would rather believe that Nigel Farage has got most of his policy ideas in the right place. He has been in business, so he's not one of these Oxbridge, intellectual yet idiot type.
Career politicians.
So, one hopes.
Absolutely. Well, we will see how it unfolds. Maybe we'll get together in 6 or 9 months or whatever and see what's happened. But I'm sure, we can keep in touch, because I do keep an eye on what is going on with Daily Sceptic and use a lot of information that comes from there, which I usually, either re-X or retweet or whatever you call it now, or Getter or, Facebook and sort of so that the information's spread around to as many people as possible. But certainly, it is an interesting topic. It's one that I'm sure will continue to consume our attention quite considerably, and we'll see what happens over the months ahead.
So thank you for your time today, Tilak. It's been brilliant.
And
really, it's been a great pleasure.
It's always nice to speak to somebody that's got a lot of common sense.
Sadly, it's not so common nowadays.
It's not as common
Yes,
these
it's
days.
not so common.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thanks,
you.
Rob.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thank you. Bye bye.